Welcome back to the Abundant Practice Podcast. I'm Allison Pereira, founder of AbundancePracticeBuilding.com. I'm here with my good friend, my biz bestie, Tiffany McLain of LeanAndMakeBank.com. Y'all should know Tiffany if you don't already. She's gonna sort out your money shit. Yeah. What do you did you just raise your
I'm just waving hi to the people.
Got it. So we're actually going to talk about reasons to stay on insurance, which you hear most consultants railing against getting off insurance. And these are some really important things to consider before you jump ship. Tiffany's the queen of premium fees. So this is kind of different from her usual talk on here. So thanks for being here.
Thank you. I definitely am. If people have any familiarity with me, they're like, Tiffany, you want every therapist to be off insurance panels. Why are you talking about staying on them? And I don't want people to have the misconception that I think every therapist should be cash pay premium fee. Although I do wish every therapist was cash pay premium fee. And I'm also aware that therapists have reasons to be on insurance panels. They're not the devil, even though I railed against them. I like the idea of kind of taking the other side for a little bit and thinking about why would it make sense to stay?
Yeah, I love this. So let's talk a little bit about let's talk about reason number one. They've heard us talk about reasons. They've heard other people talk about reasons to get off. What's reason number one for you to stay on?
I think folks, when we're thinking about getting off insurance panels or staying on, we need to think about what season of life we're in. This is something, as I've grown up, had children, really had to deal with all of the things that life throws at us. I'm like, oh, there are times when it doesn't make sense to make huge changes, when it does make sense to choose ease in our professional life instead of shaking everything up. So I think it's really important for therapists to consider, ask themselves, what phase of life am I in? Yeah. What's my bandwidth, emotional, psychic, financial? How much bandwidth do I have to make a big change in my practice? Maybe even if you have family money. Some people have family money. Some people have a spouse who has a lot of money. If you're in a particular season of life where you can actually just chill out and you don't need to make changes in your practice, or you cannot, you don't have to.
Yeah, I think there can feel like a lot of pressure as friends get off panels and things like that, and they're making more money and they're like, no, really, you can do it. You can do it. But there are times when life is hard enough and we don't need to add hard on top of it.
That's right. I don't know. So I know where this is coming out in December, early December. The time we're recording it is election time. And even on this election day, I'm feeling so much tension. Like, oh, I don't want to make any big change today. And some people have that for a month, a quarter, a year, where something's happening in our lives where a big change, it's just not the time for it. And it's okay to have it not be the time for it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about my local therapist here in Asheville. We had the hurricane last month. Like last month wouldn't have been a great time to decide to get off panels because we don't have water still. It's been a month. So like there are times like when your kids are really small. I've worked with students whose kids are really small and they're like, I have to get off insurance because I can't pay for daycare if I don't. And so there were sometimes compelling reasons to get off insurance, but sometimes there are compelling reasons to stay. So phase of life is such an important one. I think it's like important for people to be honest with themselves about these things. I know when I moved from Seattle to Asheville, I got on insurance panels here because I knew it was going to be a big enough shift and I needed to hit the ground making money. We moved kind of sooner than we wanted to leave. We wanted to stay in Seattle for a long time, but we moved sooner because my mother-in-law was sick. And so we didn't have months and months or a year or whatever we would have done to save up to make whatever cushion I need, because I need a cushion, a big cushion, because anxiety. And so I knew I just needed to get on panels to make my life easier with a 1-year-old moving cross country with a sick mother-in-law to make it make sense. And then when things had settled down some and I felt like I got off the panels because that's what I wanted to do.
I love what you're talking about in terms of you had a clear plan. I'm not just going to get on panels and then I don't know what's coming next. You were like, I need a cushion. I am willing to work a lot of hours at the beginning to save up this cushion so I can prepare myself for the next phase of my business. You were clear on your strategy. And so I think when we're talking about phases of life, it makes sense to both be in reality about what's my bandwidth like right now, and also be honest with yourself about if you want to get off, what's your exit strategy? If you don't want to be here forever, what are you going to do? And if you're seeing 40 clients a week, 30
Yeah.
clients a week, if you have little kids at home, it's really easy to get complacent and get stuck in that for years if we're not
Yes.
really being conscious and intentional about what our plan really is. What kind of life do we really want to have? So yes, phase of life, yes, season of life, and also have somewhere in the back of your mind awareness about, is this something I want to stick with, or do I want to get off at some point in my practice, in my career?
Right, right. And I think like there's a parallel process with leaving an agency job too, while you have a private practice on the side. If you can stay working 60 hours a week doing both for a long time, or you can be like, okay, once I hit 10 clients in my private practice, I'm putting in my notice, with as long as I have some consistent referrals. So yeah, we can't just keep going on and on and on without examining what's working for us and what's not, and maintain a healthy life and practice.
That's interesting. So I'm curious, what have you noticed when working with your students are pivotal points in which they pop their head up and say, oh, let me examine whether this is still working? What seasons of life have you noticed that occurring in?
So it's interesting. So I have, my newbies who are starting private practices or are plateaued somewhere in between. So that's like one set of people that we work with, but we also in Limitless Practice work with people who are full and miserable. So they're making these big changes. So I always think about them first when you ask a question like that, because all these people have raised their hand of like, I am working my tail off and I am making not as much money as I need to make to be able to retire. So I'm thinking a lot of them have kids who are no longer babies, like they're toddlers, but it's like maybe a more manageable version of toddler, where their brain is back in a way that it wasn't initially with an infant. They're getting more sleep. So phase of life wise, I see a lot of people who have toddlers or younger kids. I see some people who they just kind of realized like they were exposed to people who are not on insurance, through consultants, through social media, through whatever. It's kind of like they're waking up to that being a thing. Because what I see, and I think you probably see this too, is people who take insurance tend to clump with one another, and therapists who don't take insurance tend to clump with one another. And so it just feels like it's what everybody's doing. So they start to get exposure to other people who are not taking insurance and realize they don't have to. And I guess it's not necessarily a phase of life as much as just like wearing down and eroding of bandwidth with insurance companies that are not paying, that are not, they're not paying in a timely way. They have to spend a lot of time and energy or money on an assistant to get the payments that they need, and that they've earned. So yeah, but we're talking about keeping people on insurance. So I don't want to spend too much time on that.
But you can stay. So
Yeah.
I'll just use that to talk about, it's interesting because the very season that might lead one person to get off insurance panels is the season that might bring someone else to stay on. So, some people might say, I'm pregnant, I'm going to have a kid. Let me stay on insurance panels for security. We have students who do the opposite, which is I'm pregnant, I'm going to have a kid. Let me use this time to actually get off panels and come back after mat leave without being on insurance panels. Let me be cash paid. So really, again, it comes back to being honest with ourselves, having really assessing what do we need for ourselves now and where are we going in the future, and then trusting yourself to make that decision.
Yes. And not leaning on other people, not asking other people what they think you should do, because they're coming at it from their lens too. So I think like, yourself best. And while for some people getting off insurance during mat leave and starting their practice then is the way to go, for others, that's just adding so much more work and so much more anxiety to being a parent of an infant. So knowing what you need, and if you do eventually want to get off panels, having a really clear path for that feels safer for you. Because I'm a pusher, right? And I want to like move people along really fast. And I have to remember that, and I've had some really great students that helped me realize that my pace is not the pace. That
Say,
people are going to move slower sometimes, and that is what is right for them. And that's the support they need, is to support that pace.
yes.
Um, yeah. And if you want to stay on insurance forever because it makes sense for you, that's great, which I think could lead into that second reason to stay on insurance panels that you.
Oh, yes. The second one is if you just are the kind of person, you have just made a choice in your life that you are not going to market. You don't want to learn how to market. You don't want to be out there marketing. You don't want to spend your money that way or your energy that way. You simply want clients to come to you, even if it means you see more people, even if it means you're working more hours. That is a price you're happy to pay to not have to get into this whole marketing world. That's another reason to stay on panels.
Yeah. And I don't want that to be a fear-driven decision. Like, I'm afraid of being seen, or I don't know how, and I feel like I'd look stupid, that kind of thing. I want that to be a decision based on, I've learned some marketing things, and it's just honestly not how I want to spend my time. And it's not worth it to me to spend that time for more money. Because the truth of the matter is, many, many insurance panels and most of this country are paying you more for a lot less work than you made in agencies.
Mm-hmm.
So it's still an upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
And I want people to hear that if the marketing piece is what's been holding them back, it's still an upgrade from most agency work to take insurance in your own private practice and see 25 clients a week.
That's
So,
exactly right. That's right.
yeah.
It's not, people like me, people like you, we're like, get out there, market, you can do it. All those things are true.
Mhm.
And it still takes time. It's not like you're going to be suddenly seeing 20 cash pay clients a week, easy $200 as soon as you get off insurance panels. It's a process. It takes time and energy. You have to be able to play the long game, figure out what works for you. There's no quick and easy magic bullet solution. And so if you're somebody who is saying like, I just don't want to play that game, stay on insurance panels. You don't have to, you do not ever have to play that game if you don't want to.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Quick and easy. That was easy. Actually, let me ask you this. In terms of marketing, I want to come back to this. You mentioned briefly, if people are not marketing because they're afraid or they don't want to be seen, I wonder about those people. Like if those people are like, I just know I don't want to show up in the world or I don't want to be seen. I like you want to push them. There's so much on the other side of that. There's
Right.
something you'll come to know about yourself by putting yourself in the world. And what about the people who are like, I just don't want to know that thing?
I think that's a difference. There's a distinction between the people who are like, I don't know, I just don't really care. And the people who are like, I don't want to look stupid. The I don't want to look stupid people, I want them to push themselves because there's good, juicy, emotional work there, right? That could lead them to a better practice if they want to work through it, or could just lead to feeling really good about not being afraid anymore. I just don't want any of our decisions to be fear-based, right? In an ideal world. Not that not that all my decisions are free and clear of fear, but I want everybody's decisions to come from what they want instead of what they're afraid of.
I
So,
love, go ahead.
no, you go ahead.
I was going to say, the thing I really appreciate about that is what I heard in that, this is going to be challenging to some therapists out there listening, but also I think about it clinically, from a clinical lens. If you're not marketing or you're not growing your practice out of fear, then that is impacting your clinical work. How can you fully show up? How can you fully support your clients in their transformation, helping them lean into fear, helping them move through the hard stuff, if you're actually avoiding that in your own life or your own business? So that's another way for those of you who are like, well, I don't want to market because it's scary, or I don't want to be seen, or I'm embarrassed. That is, sorry to say, you're a less effective clinician because you're avoiding those parts of yourself in your journey.
Right. And not necessarily less than other people, but less than you could be.
Yes, 100%. It's for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's similar for those who are like, well, this is different. Like, not all of us are business people. It's the same exact thing as you not having that conversation with your mother-in-law that you need to have. But encouraging your clients to do it all the same, like avoiding tough conversations when that's what you're preaching. So versus the person you bring up who's just like, I just really don't care. Like, I really don't care to learn how to do SEO, for instance. That doesn't mean I'm not going to do SEO. It means I'm going to pay somebody to do my SEO. But like, I really have absolutely no interest in it. And if that's the way people feel about the entirety of marketing, which I find hard to believe because marketing includes so many different things, but if it's the way you feel about the entirety of marketing, yeah, okay. That's cool. Insurance will help get you full.
Yes.
We have more therapists out there in private practice now, so it might be a slower journey than it might have been a few years ago. And I'm starting to see, I don't know if you're seeing this in your students, a slight drop in the rate of referrals that people are getting. It's looking more like pre-pandemic now in terms of like frequency of referrals for the average therapist versus post-pandemic where it was a lot easier to get full faster in, the 3-ish years after the pandemic.
That's funny. Yeah, we're seeing similar, like people still can do it.
Yeah.
People are doing it, and it's not pandemic times when people are just rushing out. Clients are rushing out to find their therapists.
Right. And I'll say for people who are like, oh no, I just wanted to start my practice this month. It's still fine. We're seeing it with our students who are in our high level, like our mentorship, for instance. We're seeing it more in 6 months than in 3 months. So it's still happening relatively quickly. But it's not as easy as it was 2 years ago, for instance.
Yeah, really interesting to think about that. So people who, it's interesting because you and I we're kind of fighting ourselves back into just go market. We're kind of like, if you never want to market, it's fine. Keep your practice on insurance. And we're asking the questions, are you avoiding marketing because you're afraid? Are you avoiding marketing because you don't want to be seen? Are you avoiding marketing? Are you just avoiding marketing, or are you simply making a determination? I'm not interested in that. It's a really important thing to ask yourself as you're reflecting on how you're running your business that you have chosen to embark upon.
Right. And it ties back into the phase of life. Like you might be like, I don't have any sort of bandwidth or interest in marketing right now while I've got a toddler and a baby. No, thank you. Totally get that. Or, I've got parents who are aging and I'm sandwich generationing, or I'm taking care of my parents, or I'm getting married next month, or whatever huge big thing can be going on. Like that's going to impact your energy and your desire to market. And unless you have systems in place already, it just might not be the place to pick it up.
Yeah.
So
That's right.
yeah.
The third reason, this one is, we're going to go in the entirely opposite direction. The third reason to stay on panels or to have an insurance-based practice is if you're trying to grow a private practice, a group practice, and scale it so that you can sell it or keep it, but you want to scale it big. But especially if you're thinking, I want to build a practice and then sell it. From what I've seen and from people I've talked to, you have to take insurance in order to sell that practice to one of these big conglomerates who are buying up group practices everywhere. A private practice, insurance panels at scale make sense in a way that insurance panels as an individual practitioner doesn't always make sense.
Right.
If you have a group practice, you can have an administrator, a manager, you're having a bulk reimbursements. And so you can actually pay your own therapist relatively well. You can give them a good salary. Not like they could have as a cash pay in their own private practice, but they can make 80, 100,000, 60 to 80, 100,000 a year. And you as a business owner can be able to sell your business ultimately. What have you heard about this idea?
Oh yeah. I have a lot of friends in this position, a lot of friends who've been approached by these VC firms, venture capital funds, wanting to buy their practice like for a lot of money. So far, most of my friends have decided not to sell at this point, even though they were offered enormous amounts of money, because the way that things would change within their practice, which is like a baby of theirs, like they really love what they've created. Because once things are bought by VC, usually it's all about the investors and what they want, which is their money back, and not so much about the people doing the work or the clients. So that's the tough part. And I haven't figured out a way around that with any of my friends. I don't know. I've had a lot of conversations about it where it's just like, I don't want my people to get pay cuts. I don't want the direction that they were wanting to go with VC. Now, I don't know every single situation. So there are some groups that might approach a group to purchase them that are wonderful and that are interested in maintaining systems as they were created. It depends on the profitability of the business
Mm,
ultimately.
mm.
But it's something to consider. If you were like, "Oh, I'd like to be bought out for millions of dollars with a group practice," if that was your first like knee-jerk reaction to be like, yeah, and like just think through the whole process first. It's not right or
Mm.
wrong. Just think through the process and kind of like being on insurance or not. What's your plan? What's your plan
Mm.
ultimately?
That's
So,
right. A VC-backed group practice is not going to have the same heart or intention or presence as a
yeah.
therapist-owned group
Mm-hmm.
practice. And if you have scaled your group practice, or if you're working to scale a group practice to the point where it's very profitable, you can get someone to come in and run your practice, make sure they're still
100%.
running by your values and be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of therapists who come from agency background where the agency takes insurance, they just automatically assume I'll go into my private practice and I'll also take insurance without realizing that the scale factor, the having a lot of people on insurance is what allows that agency to run and be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't translate to quality of life, ease, financial abundance, usually in a one-to-one private practice setting, but you can
Right.
recreate it in your group practice. So that's a reason
Yes,
to use insurance.
absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's interesting to think, I think if I never took insurance, but I certainly had low fees in the
Mm-hmm.
early days of my private practice. And if I were listening to this conversation, I might be feeling uh, pushed or challenged or defensive. Well, wait a minute. So I'm encouraging people to listen. If you're listening and feeling like, yeah, this makes sense, I feel easeful. I love that I'm on insurance based on what Allison and Tiffany are saying. It makes sense for me to stay on right now. Yay, that's the goal.
Yeah.
If you're feeling a little stressed or called out or pushed or called in, then I encourage those of you to think about, oh, maybe there is a part of me that actually is resonating with, bucking against, wanting to experience an insurance-free private practice, a cash-based practice. So if that's you, yay, welcome. I
Mm-hmm.
encourage you to listen to those parts, wrestle with us in this conversation, fight with us in the comments, and we can kind of help you think about what makes sense for you at this season of your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Because nothing is right or wrong. I mean, I think you and I both always have had this tenet of like what a therapist chooses to do with their own practice, like that's their choice. There's no bullying people
Mm.
in one way or the other. I mean, like certainly happens on the therapist Facebook groups, right? Um, but not in our paid groups where people are in our programs. So
Yes.
it's interesting how people feel pressured on both sides,
Mm-hmm.
depending on who's around them, who's talking to them. And ultimately, it is your practice. And I want each therapist to be fully responsible for the choices that they make in their practice and not victims of the choices they make in their practice. And that doesn't look just one way.
I love that. Be fully responsible for the choices you're making and the results that come from those choices versus a
Yeah.
victim to the circumstances. That's, as always, very empowering.
Yeah. You're the boss, right?
You're the boss. And when you hear, by the way, Allison or I, we have strong opinions. We
Yeah.
will put things out forcefully. And when we do, we're talking to the people who resonate. If you're hearing that and you're like, that's not me, how dare you? Everybody can't live that way. We're not asking everyone to live this way. So I love this conversation that gives you the freedom to, just like what you said, Allison, take responsibility for the choices you're making and the outcomes that come from that, the result of those choices, and always be willing and ready to reflect.
Yeah.
Check in and see if this is still working for me. And if it is, keep it up. If it's not, you have so many options about how to change, so much support and going in another
Yeah.
direction.
Absolutely. Yay. Well, I should say one of those supports is is Tiffany over at leanandmakebank.com. I have like all of our students do your fun with fees calculator. I recommend it for all of our, especially our the students we work the closest with in Limitless in the mentorship. Um, because knowing what you need to make per session, it may be insurance covers that, and then you
Yes.
can like rest a little. It may be. And so doing that calculator helps people understand instead of just basing their number off what they hear in their area. It's actually easier to stand behind too, when
Mm.
it's like, I need this fee in order to put away for vacation, in order to have sick time, in order to send my kid to camp, those kinds of things.
Pay
So
for retirement. I mean, I'm thinking about that. I'm sure you are too. Like,
all the
are
time.
we going to be taken care of? And then we see our parents. So
Mhm.
definitely having a clear number grounded in each person's unique set of circumstances and desires
Yeah.
is vital when making a decision around, do I want to stay on panels? Do I want to leave? How many hours do I want to work? And also, what's my long game? So someone might do the fun with fee calculator, and there'll be a link. You can drop a link for them.
Mhm.
Someone might do the fun with fee calculator and get a number that feels just way out of what feels possible for them.
Mhm.
And I encourage you to think about, okay, maybe not today, but what would it look like for me to take the next 5 years to figure out how to make that my reality? So at least you're
Mhm.
grounded in what's true for you, what your desires are, and not kind of just living in this gray, I don't know what, back to this idea of victim to your circumstances. You got to be the captain
Mhm.
of your ship.
Yeah, absolutely. As much as you can. There's enough that we can't control in our lives
It's true.
in this
It's true.
election. Yeah. It's funny when this airs, it'll be like, oh, look a little past Allison and Tiffany, so stressed out. And then X, Y, and Z happened.
Then X, Y, and Z. It's gonna be when this episode comes out, folks, it's gonna be future us
Yeah.
revisiting and knowing where we were at. I hope it's wonderful. And no matter what, um, we gotta be the captain of our ships and our behaviors and our actions.
Absolutely. 100%.
Yeah.
Yay. Well, thank you, Tiffany.
It's my pleasure. And I'll also direct people, if you like podcasts, we have our podcast back, the money sessions, back after like a 2 year Tiffany having children, raising
Mhm.
those children to 3 and 5, hiatus. They're back. So people can also go check out the money sessions.
Absolutely. And you're also doing a training in the Abundance Party. So
Oh yeah.
I'm
Folks,
psyched
get in
about that.
the abundance party. If you're not in the abundance party, well, maybe you're one of those therapists who never wants to market. But if you are willing to push yourself and learn more, definitely join the abundance party, and I'll see you in there, and we'll have Q&A and actual live, like how do we actually do this thing, which is going to be fabulous.
Yeah. Love it. Awesome. Well, thanks. I'll see you soon.
Thank you.